Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melissa Caprio.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. How are you guys doing today? I hope everybody is doing well. I have a super interesting guest and an exciting show today. We're going to get lessons from a near-death experience from my guest, Ash Perrow, and he will join me in a few minutes. And I think it's Perrow, not Perot, excuse me. He will let me know when I have him on. I just asked him, and of course it flew out of my head, but that's what happens when you hit middle age and you start going through all these wonderful changes. You forget things you heard 10 seconds ago. Anyway, for my regulars who join me each week, thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me. You have no idea. I get your emails, I get your messages, and I love it. And if you're joining me for the first time, I want to say welcome. Thank you so much. A little bit about me. I am a photographer, I'm an artist, and I'm also an author, and I have a book titled Postcards to the Universe, Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And in my book, I talk all about manifesting, and I have people make manifesting postcards. I photograph them. It's kind of like a vision board, but just we pick one area that we want to bring something into our life. And when that shows up in your reality, I can share your story. I have a blog that I put out every week, pretty much almost every week, on the show, and I have more books I'm working on. So please, make them. They're so much fun. If you have any questions on how to create one or where to send it, go to postcardstotheuniverse.com. I have a whole section on how to create a manifesting postcard, how to set the space, where to send it, and I will help you if you want any help. Please just reach out to me. And check out my book. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or you can ask your favorite bookstore, and they'll get it for you. Also, just wanted to tell everybody that I started doing these 3 to 4 minute videos, and I'm posting them on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And they're on a variety of topics. It's all things inspirational, and I'm purposely keeping them short. So please go and check them out, and I would love it if you would like, comment, follow, or share. That would mean the world to me. I feel like I need to put out as much positivity as possible right now because there's so much negativity going on in the world, and I feel like the more positive we can throw out there, the better. So check them out and let me know what you guys think. All right, so let me get to my guest today, Ash Perrow. In 2016, a near-death experience following his back surgery became a pivotal moment for Ash, leading him to dedicate his life to guiding others to live and work authentically. For the past 8 years, he has delved into the unseen obstacles of fear and self-doubt, insights that now inform his coaching. Ash has empowered individuals to break through their inner limitations, trust their inner wisdom, and confidently pursue their purpose. His personal journey of recovering from severe PTSD and depression deeply informs his understanding of healing and resilience. He coaches heart-centered professionals, therapists, and thought leaders to confidently share their work by refining their message and expanding their visibility without sacrificing authenticity. His Levels of Visibility quiz helps professionals understand their current stage and the necessary steps to reach more people with their valuable work, integrating inner critic transformation, authentic communication, and conscious marketing. His expertise has gained significant traction. He has over 2 million views on TikTok in 2024, and he features in publications like Men's Health Magazine, Australia, and Lad Bible. As the host of the Beyond Turning Points podcast, Ash explores the transformative moments that shape lives and the subsequent journeys of walking one's true path. And you can find out more about him if you go to his website. I'm going to spell it for everybody since we're on radio. PERROW.com. Welcome, Ash. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Melissa, what an honor to be with you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Oh, you're welcome. I love the accent. So he's calling all the way in from Australia today to be here. What time is it where you are, by the way? It's night, right?
No, it's morning. It's just gone past 6 a.m.
Oh my God. Well, I really appreciate you showing up. I don't do anything at 6 a.m. except for sleep. So thank you so much. Oh, good. So Ash, it's so tell everybody a little bit of your background. And obviously you had a near-death experience with completely shifted your life. So can you share what you were doing before and what happened and how this changed you?
So before my near-death experience, life was hard. I was always trying to work life out. I was doing my best, and I was doing my best to be kind and help other people and live a life of just being happy, but it wasn't working. And so to go back even further, in 2005, my ex-wife and I were together then, but we had a stillborn daughter together, and it was up until that point, I'd been this enthusiastic young man full of life and possibilities, and that experience really rocked me. And there was a moment where I was holding my daughter, and she was so perfect in my arms. It was as if she had been made for my arms. I was looking down at her, and my wife was crying next to me, and I thought, I'm never going to let anything bad happen to my family ever again. That was the moment PTSD got locked in. It was like a glitch that happened in my brain where it just went, okay, we must protect. We must protect, we being me, right? But it was this anxiety, that was the starting point, but it developed very gradually over a few years. And after 3 years, I wasn't sleeping. I was obsessed with making money on the internet, and it was all about trying to protect my family. Except I didn't have any emotional intelligence then. I'd never done any therapy or knew much about anything as far as the emotional and spiritual world went. And so that compounded, and it led me down this road of ending up in mental health clinics and on pharmaceutical antidepressants, and this whole process of questioning my life, but also this sense of there's something wrong with me.
Sure.
Yeah, and so I gradually began to recover from that, and then I still had severe depression, and I got to this point where the relationship had broken up, and life had moved on, and I had a new partner, and we had a blended family, and life was still hard. And I, interestingly, I love surfing, and I haven't been able to surf for over 10 years now because I developed a back injury. And there was a particular day where I was standing on the edge of the water, and the surf was fantastic, and there was nobody else out, and I thought, okay, I'm going to grab my board. And I heard this voice in my head, and it was like God's voice. It said, if you go surfing today, you will hurt your back.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't like my job, and I said, bring it on. And so I started paddling out. It was crazy, right? It's like the universe gives you a very clear message.
Don't ever say bring it on, because they will.
Yeah. So if there's anything anyone gets from this call, if the universe gives you a message and you say bring it on, hold on. So
right.
I started paddling out. I duck dived through the first wave, and then I went to duck dive through the second wave, and I popped 2 discs in my back. Which, for anyone that's had a back injury like that, it's extraordinary pain. And so that led me down this road where I I was in a lot of pain for a year and a half, and my discs disintegrated in my back, and I ultimately made the choice to go in for back surgery. And then during the surgery, the surgeons tore a vein, and they were unaware that they had torn a vein, and it was a simple thing to overlook because they were operating on my lower back, but the vein tore in my groin, so they were unaware that that had happened. And then they stitched me up and sent me back to the ward, and I bled out internally for 16 hours, and then the next morning is when I had my near-death experience.
Wow. Oh my God. Well, first of all, I want to say I'm so sorry about your daughter who was stillborn. I can only imagine the trauma that caused for you and your ex. I mean, I can't. I actually, for a little while, volunteered for an organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep because I'm a photographer, and I would photograph babies that were stillborn so the parents could bring something home with them. Because a lot of people, you don't get to come home, obviously, with their baby, and their room is all ready, and how traumatic that is. So I did that for a little while, and it was very humbling. It was a very humbling experience. So I can just imagine what that trajectory that it sent you on. And the surfing, I'm not surprised that after everything that you were going through, that you just said, bring it on. And this caused that whole trajectory. So what happened? What did you see in your near-death experience? Or what did you experience?
Yeah. So initially what happened was that a physio came in to get me up for rehab. And I'd been in a lot of pain that night, and I looked down at my leg, and it was very swollen. It was about double the size of what it would normally be. And he was just young and likely just out of college. And I said to him, my leg is not normally like this. And he said, you'll be fine. Just hop up. So I stood up, and then I collapsed on the bed. He pressed the red button, and the siren went off, and the code blue team came in, and at this stage, I'm still conscious. I'm thinking everything's going to be okay. Things happen. And, after what I've already been through in my life, I was like, okay, I'll get through this, right? And so they put the oxygen mask on me, and they're trying to attach the ECG monitors, but my body's just in this cold sweat, and they're having a lot of difficulty attaching the monitors. And then they start talking about what's happening, and they say, he doesn't have a pulse. He's not breathing. Keep your eyes open. Stay with us, Ash. And initially I'm like, okay. We'll get through this.
Yeah.
And I'm hyper aware of where everybody is in the room. It's quite an interesting experience to look back on and have that awareness of what was happening and the clarity of what was happening. Extraordinary. And also no pain, zero pain as this is all happening. And so then they start talking about my blood pressure, and I hear them say his blood pressure's 52/36.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, I'm dying. This is dying. I'm dying right now. And I say, call my partner. And somebody runs out of the room. And they're saying, keep your eyes open, Ash, stay with us. And then I had this thought, nobody I love is here in the room with me. And I just had the most extraordinary wave of sadness. It just was, and I thought, oh, I'm dying and no one I love is here. And it was such a deep moment of sadness and realization that I'd been keeping people at arm's length. Not in this moment, but in life, because of the judgment of myself and how I was in the world. And then I started to black out. And the last thing I remember was looking in the corner, and I saw the physio standing there, and he was just pale with fear. And I thought, you poor guy, you think you've killed me.
Oh.
So then I blacked out. And my experience of blacking out, it wasn't like what would normally happen if someone fainted or or passed out. And so normally people wake up and go, what happened?
Right.
Whereas I became these ripples. And it was as if these ripples were just going out infinitely. The ripples were me, I was the ripples. There was no separation, and it was just this deep understanding that I was one with these ripples. And I was really surprised that I had conscious thought and was able to observe these things. And there was also this sense of being myself, and I thought, oh, I thought I'd become like this enlightened Buddha when I die. and I was like,
Already, right?
I'm still me. Yeah, I'm still me. And so, from that, my understanding is we all have this unique fingerprint of us, of our soul, and that's who we are. And once I blacked out, right, the conditioning was starting to fade away. So the experiences of life and how I'd learned to live life and manage life, and they were sliding away, and what I was left with was an essence of myself. Extraordinary to experience that in one's life. And I know people experience that in yoga and meditation and nature, but to experience it in that moment, sort of after I had blacked out and was so close to death, it was extraordinary impact on my life.
So you have no pain. Did you see your body? Like some people have experienced looking down on what's going on and they're separated from their body. Did you see or feel any beings with you, like your guides or angelic beings or anything like that? Or you were just experiencing it in the sense that you felt one with everything?
Yeah, so I didn't see any light. I wasn't able to observe remote view anything or anything like that. It was just me as ripples going out with this absolute surprise that I could still think. I still had this awareness.
So they obviously I'm talking with you, so you're back in your body. So they bring you back, and then what started to happen? Like, how did your mindset shift? Obviously, it had a profound effect on you.
So as I was those ripples and going out, I said I want to stay. And I started to say, I want to stay. And I was repeating, I want to stay, I want to stay. And the ripples were just going out and out and out. And I knew that this was still dying. I am still dying. And then I started to say, people I want to stay for. I want to stay for my partner. I want to stay for the kids. And the ripples are still going out. And I know that I am dying. And I had this sense that it was almost too late. And
Okay.
I felt this warmth come over me, and I said, which totally came out of a different place, and I said, I want to stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart. And the instant I expressed that, straight back into my body, opened my eyes. They're saying we've got a pulse, he's breathing. I was in level 11 pain, and I started moaning and screaming, but I was still alive. And it was just, that was a turning point for me where I went, oh, okay, I wasn't living from my heart. Otherwise, that would not have just happened in that very instant.
Interesting. Okay, well, now obviously you're back. You have to recover. So, what are you thinking? Like, I have to change my whole life. I'm going to do this now. I can't even imagine what your thought process must be like that. Be after that.
Initially, I was so ill that my focus was just get back to health, and I had I'd lost almost half my blood. So
Oh, wow.
that took a long time to recover from, and there were complications with blood clots, and a baseball-sized hematoma developed in my abdomen, and it was a very, very, very challenging time, and it took me 8 months to get back to full-time work. But within the first couple of days, I was laying in the ICU, and I'm thinking, oh, I wasn't living from my heart. And so I started to process that and thinking, what does it mean to live from the heart? How was I getting it wrong? And that question, what does it mean to live from the heart? That became a driver for me. Whereas, okay, because our questions will often drive our human behaviors, right?
Right.
And we have a picture in our head where we want to be, and then we have the questions that are going to lead us there. So, how do I share more good in the world? So, for example, with what you do, how do I impact more people with my book and with my work and with my videos? And so those questions will drive the behavior. And so my question was, what does it mean to live from the heart?
That's a good question. What was your question before this experience? What was it like to live from my head? Was it ego based? Were you blocking your love from giving and coming into your heart, you think?
That's a great question, Melissa. I was trying to make everyone else happy. So I was trying to second guess what everybody else needed, what everybody else wanted, and then thinking that I would be happy from doing that for them. Or so instead of listening to my guidance that's saying, hey, don't go surfing today.
Right.
I'm like, okay. Because I was in pain. And the pain, there was emotional pain that I had a beautiful upbringing, but we all have pain. We all have these little micro traumas or significant traumas. And the pattern that I had incorporated was make everybody else happy. Don't have people unhappy with you. And of course, that's this mouse wheel that you're just never going to get there.
No, you're never going to get there. And then what starts to happen is resentment builds, right?
Yes. And so that was playing out in my relationships where I didn't feel valued because, I had done X, but then I didn't receive Y. And it was just, so there was a lot to do with me in the way that I was relating, because I was thinking people should appreciate me for doing what I was doing. Because, and it wasn't coming from a place of, I'm going to use the word purpose, right? It wasn't coming from a place of purpose. And so for me, what I understand as purpose now is that comes effortlessly from a place of me being happy and healthy, connected to my heart, right? Connected to my intuition and my guidance. When I come from that place, purpose is easy. I naturally help people. So if I can be happy and healthy first, then I'm going to have a lot of clarity on how to move forward in life.
Yeah. So what question do you ask yourself now if a situation or an experience comes up? Do you say to yourself, will doing this make me happy? Like, for anybody who's listening, like, what are some of the questions we should be asking ourselves to live from our heart?
So one thing, I guess, rather than, and I know I mentioned happy, it's in my, I've got my hands in front of me and I'm making a circle, right? I'm like fulfillment. Yeah.
Yes.
When life is fulfilling, it can be challenging.
Sure.
Yeah. But there's moments of absolute devastation and challenge, and that's a full life. So my way that I make decisions and go forward now is mostly checking in with my guidance. In the past, it was my head making the decisions. So for me, my guidance can be my own intuition, or I talked about my stillborn daughter, her name's Lucy. I have a little angel there called Lucy, and she's always in my corner just like, keep going, Dad, keep going, Dad. And then I've been blessed over the last few years to have other guides come in and guide me. And so I can ask, right? And I can also check in with my body's wisdom. So a little strategy for anyone that's listening is that you can tap into your own body's wisdom at any time. And a good way to learn what that is tuning to the sensations of your body. And so just take a moment where you're on your own and then say out loud, for example, you say someone else's name. So I might say, my name is Melissa. When I say that, my personal, my body has a reaction. When I say when I say my name is Ash, there's a different sensation in my body. And so that's a really simple way that people can tune into their own guidance is what's a yes, what's a no. And you will get a sensation. So one of my clients I was working with last week, when it's a yes, he feels this warmth in his abdomen. When mine is a yes, I get tingles up the back of my neck. And when it's a no, I get a sinking feeling in my body.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean, because when I get a yes, a real strong yes, I get goosebumps. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I do. Okay, so let's hold that thought, and we're going to take our break here, and we'll come back in just a couple minutes. Stay tuned, everybody.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Hi, I'm Melissa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on Om Times Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives. Hi, and welcome back. So, Ash, I was thinking during the break about how there was this change, such a significant change after your near-death experience, and we were talking about tapping in with our bodies, you know, to know that we're connecting with our heart instead of living out of our heads, living out of our hearts. How has that specifically changed your life now that you lead from your heart?
Yeah, fantastic questions, Melissa. So that what happened was after I got out of hospital, so I was in hospital for 3 weeks. 2 weeks after that, the relationship I was in fell apart. Right?
No,
It
really?
had already,
Wow.
yeah. We had been together for 5 years. It had been very challenging for a few years, and we cared about each other and were doing our best, but it was time for it to end. And it was like couldn't stop it from ending, even though
Yeah.
I'd spent the last few years trying, and it just ended. And my daughter and I, we moved out, and I had very few possessions because I'd sold them all to move into this house for this relationship. And so my health was very poor. I had very few possessions, and just other than my daughter's toys and her bedroom and things like that. And so life started from zero. I not quite zero. I had the greatest gift in my daughter, who was born 11 months after Lucy. And so it was, it was like the universe just went, you're going to learn to live from your heart by having nothing to start with.
Wow.
And so I just kept thinking to myself, am I making this decision from my heart? And not really knowing what that even meant, but just working it out, right? Like we do with life, we're just taking the next step and working it out. So my relationship that had ended, and I had done this work, which it's all over the world. It's called the Path of Love, which is a retreat. And so I had done some of their small weekend work, and I thought, I know where I'm going to learn to live from my heart. I'm going to go to the Path of Love, and it's a week-long retreat. So, I went there. I was still in a full leg stocking from blood clot, and was still recovering from back surgery, and my health wasn't amazing, but I just had the most beautiful experience of connecting to my heart and what that meant, and working through things from the past and learning how to connect with other people and be vulnerable, but also hold other people in their vulnerability. And it was extraordinary. And so that work really, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this work for the next 12 months. And so I committed to myself to that work of the heart. And in that process, I met my now wife. And so we've been together for 8 years. And it's that, so my relationship changed. And then a couple of years down the track, I was a school teacher and I was teaching music. And one day I was leaving work and I thought, oh, everything's in place and I'm so content. And then the voice of God came back in my head and it said, it's time to play bigger. It's time to move on. And I remember just sitting in the car and saying, you're joking. You're kidding. I can't believe it. Are you serious? Right. Yeah. And so
I'm not surprised.
I was resisting. Yeah. And of course, I was open this time though. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what to do, but I'm open. Okay. Please don't hurt me.
Yeah, right. Oh my God. Well, I'm not surprised because I know from my own experience and from other people that I've talked to, when we make these decisions to change something super significant, like deciding to live from your heart or wanting to raise your vibration or level up your life, right? Things will fall away that are no longer an energetic match to that. So it doesn't surprise me actually that your relationship before your wife fell apart when you made that decision, because it had to, for you to live authentically of where you wanted to be. And that happens with jobs, careers, money, homes, relationships, families. I mean, it's crazy. It's like when we say we're going to take this on, I do think God says, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you ready? Because it's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies like people think.
Yeah, I have a saying that commitment leads to more commitment. It's like,
Right.
oh, you think you're in, right? You think you're in this relationship? Well, guess what? How committed are you? You think you're in for this work of the heart? Well, guess what? How committed are you? And
It's
so
true.
there's also this, and I love this idea that, which came to me one day, was that the angels, they're always watching, right? And it's like they're there, they're watching with love. But what's required is for you to step into your warrior first, right? So they're watching with love. When you step into the warrior of your commitment and advocate for yourself through your actions and your discipline, which could be, no substances or meditation or whatever that might be for whoever's listening. When you step into the warrior and you really commit to the warrior and keep showing up, then the angels actually come down with the rewards.
I like that. I never thought of it or heard it described that way, but I do. I like that. Become your own warrior. So going off of that, what do you think? And you work with clients one-on-one, and do you work with groups also?
Not at the moment. I am just about to start a group for heart-centered professionals with their social media, which, for me it seems crazy, right? But that's where guidance has led me, because what happened was that my guidance started saying, you need to share the story. And I was like, no, I don't want to be out speaking and sharing the story. People are going to think I'm crazy. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So, but of course, I'm like, okay, I get it. Don't hurt me.
Right. I'm being called to do this. So that's what I never got to finish what I wanted to. My question was, why do you think we are, from your one-on-ones or most of the people that you're meeting in your journey, why are we always getting in our own way? Because I really think we get in our own way.
It's such an interesting balance between our, let's say, our soul and our soul mission and our humanness. And so, okay, we're getting in our own way because of what we think. Where does thought, where do we think that? That's in the brain, right?
Right.
There's consciousness, which is outside, but there's thought that is in the brain, and that's come from our conditioning and it's come from our DNA, right? And so it's been programmed into our DNA through our ancestors. And so, okay, how do we become free? How do we experience free with the intensity of emotions and conditioning that we have?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big question, because you're going to get you're going to get some serious answers, and that's why it's good to have somebody to work with to help you find clarity, because I think a lot of us, many of us, or at least at certain times in our lives, we see ourselves very differently than the world sees us. And, we have a lot of anxieties, a lot of fears. We hide a lot of who we are because we're afraid. And sometimes the best thing to do is work with somebody that can help us overcome that. Because do you find that most of us are afraid to be seen? I had an ex tell me something like, oh, well, when you meet somebody new, their representative shows up. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, right? Because that's what we do. Our representative shows up the way we wish we were, the way we try to be. But really, we have a lot of stuff we got to work out first to live up to that, to be that person who we want to embody. What do you think about that?
So humanity has survived from being in communities, right? So one person out in the jungle or the desert or trying to catch a woolly mammoth, it's not going to go so well, right?
Right.
So, but when we're in community, humanity is much more likely to survive.
Right.
So we have thought processes to keep us in that community no matter what, right? So what happens is we worry about what people think.
Yes.
We worry about changing the status quo or changing our role. So, for example, people that want to change careers or what they want, or they want to just put themselves out on social media to say, hey, this is the work that I do now, or this is what I've discovered and can help you. They have to work through that tribal structure that is in their brain, this primal structure holding them in the same place in the tribe. It's a bit like that movie Crudes, Don't Go Out of the Cave. I don't know if you've seen that as an animated movie, right? And it's don't go out of the cave. right? Because
Right.
otherwise you're going to threaten the tribe. So it's actually not about us. It comes from a place of for the tribe, but that was in survival mode. Now in
Okay.
life, we're much more resourced than we were 1,000,
Sure.
5,000, 100,000 years ago. But we still have the primal structure that's trying to hold us in the tribe. And so we have to work through that and test out. So it's almost like this confidence comes from knowing ourselves and understanding ourselves, then testing ourselves in the world or in conversations with people or whatever it might be. And as we do that, we get feedback that, hey, we're okay. We're okay. That worked. And so then we're more likely to back ourselves. And as we back ourselves, we learn more about ourselves. And as we learn more about ourselves, we test it out again. And so it creates this beautiful momentum of confidence and courage, and that people start getting the momentum of doing what they want to do.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense to me. And then this can lead me to this question, because I know you talk a lot about this in your work. Our inner critic. How do we handle the inner critic who says to us, let's say we are trying to expand our life or grow in our life? You know, the inner critic says, who do you think you are that you can do this, right? That's what we do to ourselves. Who do you think you are? And it holds us back in a lot of ways, because then we'll say, yeah, really, who do I think I am? I can't. And then I can't, I shouldn't, I won't. It's going to upset the apple cart here. It's going to mess up this relationship. How do we maybe I talk to my inner critic? That's what works for me. But how do we work with our inner critic?
So if the inner critic didn't serve us, it would have been evolved out over time.
Ooh, interesting.
Right? Like nature by
Never thought about it. Never thought about it like that. Okay, tell me more about that.
So nature by design evolves out things that aren't beneficial.
Right.
Yeah. So all the people that the inner critic was ruining their lives, they would have died and not passed it on.
Okay, true. I never thought, like I said, I
Like
never even thought about it like that. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So getting extreme, right? But so what it wants for us is survival. Okay?
Okay.
It's the inner critic. So what we want to do, and beautiful that you said that you talk to your inner critic. It's like, okay, what are you saying? Like really with presence and self-compassion, that you have this part of you that's trying to protect you, and it can be overbearing and it can be very challenging, but you sit down with it, get a pen or just contemplate with it. Okay, what do you want for me? And the inner critic will be, well, I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want you to be embarrassed, right? And ultimately, it doesn't want you to harm the tribe. So when you sit down consciously with your inner critic and go, okay, I know what I'm doing is good for my family or good for me or good for humanity. Okay, well, thank you for your concern. But inner critic, I'm doing this anyway. And you're coming along. You're coming along with me. So then you're embracing all of yourself. Yeah, because if you try and reject the inner critic, you're rejecting part of your human self. And so there's going to be this disharmony in your actions as you go forward. Whereas if you go, okay, I have an inner critic, and my inner critic says that I have a stupid Australian accent. It doesn't say that, but I know I have an Australian accent, but it doesn't say that, right? But
I hope
but
not.
if I can accept
we
that,
love Australian accents. Right.
so if I can accept that and move forward, going, okay, I have an Australian accent. Okay, I'll keep going, right? And then then I'm testing it out in the world, and I'm getting feedback, and I'm backing myself, and I'm learning more about myself, and it just creates the cycle again. So the key is the inner critic is trying to protect you. It has a purpose. If you listen to it, spend a bit of time with it, and then tell it, guess what? I'm doing this anyway, and you're coming with me. We're going to do this together.
Yeah. No, I like that you said that, and it's true. I never really thought about it until you described it. Is that part of the inner critic is how it affects the tribe, right? So if you want to make a big move in the sense you want to end a relationship, right? And so your inner critic is going because, well, if I end a relationship, how is this going to affect my kids? How is this going to affect the in-laws and the parents and this, the siblings and the community and the home? And so yeah, I can see how you're thinking of that as how is this inner critic also affecting the tribe? And then working from your heart tells me, well, if this is what's in my best interest, I have to make this move anyway. I have to make this move anyway because it's in my own best interest and I have to listen to my heart.
Yes, and an extension on that, which was one of my big learnings after the near-death experience. When it's in your best interests, it has a positive impact on everybody in your ecosystem,
Yeah, that makes sense.
right? The
Yeah.
children get a happier mother, right? The
Yes.
in-laws, they might be hurt, but ultimately
Right.
you're creating opportunity for them to look within themselves and where their happiness is coming on, and pressure that they might be putting on others, or ways that they are that pushes people away, or brings them in. And so you acting in your best interests, you're the best person to decide that for yourself.
Of course.
That just, I'm trying to find the word, it proliferates out into everybody you interact with.
Sure.
And your children get to see a happy version of you rather than someone that's trying to navigate conflict all the time.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so true because that's what we do, right? We going back to what you said originally, always trying to make everybody else happy. And actually, it has the opposite effect because when you're not happy, the people that love you around can sense that energetically, even if you're pretending, because you can't really pretend. People can feel the vibe. I'm convinced of that. I think we think we're pretending, but we're not. But you have, because I want to make sure I mention this, because you have a lot of free access tools and quizzes and stuff on your website. You have something called the free inner critic quiz that helps people do a self-assessment that they can find on your website, correct?
Yes, and so when they do that, they'll be able to see, am I doing what is my primary behaviors that are stopping me from doing what I want? So, for example, self-sabotage, self-judgment, perfectionism,
Yeah.
things like that. And then they'll go into my email newsletter and they get tips how to work with those aspects, as well as a weekly newsletter where it's called Heart, Head, Hand, right? And so it's an insight from the heart. It's the logical part of that. So because I'm human with a brain, so let's nurture the heart, let's nurture the head, and then the hand is the actions. What actions can you take, which could be a reflection or anything like that. And the goal is that there's this resource that comes to you every week that if you want to, you can use it for a reflection, and it might be aligned with something that's happening in your life at that time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, and I talk about this, and I always say this on my shows with my different guests, that it's always an inside job, right? Like you can't. People say, "Oh, I want to change the world." Well, you can't change the world, but you can change the world by changing yourself because it does. It has a ripple effect. Like I'm not surprised now. The more I'm talking to you, that your experience with your near-death experience was the ripples. You were extending yourself in ripples, right? Because the work you're doing is going out in ripples. And we're talking about the ripple effect here, how our own journey and our own fulfillment affects everybody in our sphere around us, which I love. Yeah, that's just great. And you talk about this a lot on your own podcast, what's it called? Beyond Turning Points. That's the title of your podcast.
It is. And that came about because I just kept meeting all these amazing people, and it wasn't the actual event that made the difference in their life, but what they did afterwards. So that's why it's beyond turning points, because stuff can happen, but what are you going to do with it? And so that's the main focus for that podcast. And occasionally I'll do a solo cast where I'll just share something. So one of the last ones was 3 ways to manage a chaotic world, right? So if people feel like the world is coming at them and it's getting a bit too intense. Well, how do you manage that?
Yeah, well, can you give us a couple tips? Because it's pretty intense, especially if you're living here in the States right now. Oh my Lord.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
energy you
Yes.
walk out the door here, the energy is, you can cut it with a knife right now, what's going on. So, and I know that that ripples all around the world. So do you have some tips
yeah.
for us?
Well, we all have different roles that we're
Right.
here for, but one of the insights for me, and I see you doing this, is that I'm here to create, not fight, right?
Yeah.
And so my way of subtly changing the world is through creation. And so when my brain gets into protection mode and starts to fight,
Yeah.
no. That's not my role. My role is to
Yeah.
change through creating. And so it's a process of letting go and acceptance, and that there's only so much I can control in the world, which sometimes I struggle to control myself. So,
Sure.
how much control do I truly have? But I can create. And so that's my focus. That's one of the ways that I manage that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest way that I manage it, because I definitely have a fighting spirit within me, right? And I have to remind myself, and I'll ask myself this a lot, is saying this, is going there serving you? What do you expect to get out of it? You can't change other people. You can't make them see things if they're not ready to see them. So how is this benefiting you? And 99.9% of the time is it's not. And that will stop me, right? I mean, of course, there's that 1% where I'm just like, screw it. I'm saying it anyway. I'm going there anyway because I have to like expel it from my body. But you're right. Asking yourself those very, very important questions. Is this serving me? How is this living from my heart? I think it's just such a simple question that everybody can ask themselves every day with the choices that they make.
Yes, and beautiful that you have that insight. And if your brain will try and solve whatever problems you give it, that's its job. It's a tool
Yep.
for solving your problems. So your heart tells you where you want to go, right? This is the guidance. Your mind is to solve the problem. So if you're on social media or watching the news, you can hack your social media feed so it's more conscious, it's more loving.
Sure.
Guess
Yeah.
what? Your mind is going to respond that way. Whereas, what's happening in the Middle East,
Yeah.
it's horrific.
I know. Yeah.
And I can send empathy and love and have little micro actions. However, that conflict, for me, it's not mine to solve, but I can love the people that are going through that experience.
Absolutely.
So being mindful of the inputs, that will feed what my mind wants to solve for me. So that coming back to the question, how do I live from my heart? That's what my mind was solving from me, and still solves for me, actually. Like it's aligned with the mission of my heart.
Of course, of course. I mean, it's a journey, right? It's not a destination. We're always learning. We're always growing. So is there anything, Ash, we only have a couple of minutes, I see. Is there anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about, or anything you're offering, or people can find you on your website and reach out to you? Let everybody know the best way to connect with you.
Thanks, Melissa. So if people resonate, they would like to have a conversation about what it's like to work with me one-to-one, they can contact me through my website. There's lots of free resources there. And my way of operating is that I want you to trust yourself and back yourself and do what it is that you want to do in the world. And so my role is to facilitate you becoming aware of what's stopping and assisting you to move forward, be it connecting to your heart or seeing your inner critic structure or learning how to do your social media really well so that people connect with it and that you can share your message and your work with the world, because we all have that unique fingerprint that is ourselves. And that's the gift. The more you can be that unique fingerprint in the world, the happier you're going to be.
Oh, thank you so much, Ash, for being here with me today. And guys, I will have a link to his website in the bio about the show. Thank you so much. It was a really great conversation, and I appreciate you coming and joining me today. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. And I'm wishing everyone a wonderful week filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.